I never thought 6 words could change everything I felt for my wife. No thanks, I already did it today at work. It's strange how quickly your body can go numb while your mind races 100 miles an hour. One moment I was standing in our kitchen, a cup of coffee in my hand, thinking about how long it had been since we'd been close. The next, I was frozen, my fingers tightening around the mug as if it could anchor me in place. Sarah didn't even look up when she said it. She was scrolling through her phone, sitting cross-legged on the counter like she always did when she wanted to seem casual, unbothered. But those words, they weren't casual. They were a confession hidden in plain sight. I tried to laugh it off. That's the weird joke. My voice cracked just slightly, betraying the sudden weight in my chest. She finally glanced up, smirking. Who said I was joking? Then she slid off the counter, grabbed her keys, and said she'd be late coming home that night because she had work stuff. The front door clicked shut, leaving me in a silence so sharp it felt like a scream. I didn't move for a full minute. My mind replayed her tone, her smirk, those words. They didn't belong to the woman I thought I married. This was someone else entirely, someone I didn't know. The thing is, Sarah and I weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least I thought we were. We'd been married for 5 years. Met in college, fell in love fast, and built a life together. She worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm downtown. I managed a small IT business from home. We had routines, inside jokes, traditions that felt unshakable. And now, suddenly, I was standing here wondering if any of it had been real. I wanted to storm into her office, demand answers, corner whoever she'd been doing it with. But instead, I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. The hurt was raw, but underneath it, a colder, sharper thought began to form. If she really meant what she said, then this wasn't new. You don't just drop a bomb like that out of nowhere. It meant there were layers I hadn't seen. Lies I'd stepped right over without noticing. That night, she didn't come home until after midnight. No apologies, no explanations. Just the faint smell of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her jacket. I didn't ask where she'd been. She didn't offer. Instead, I played my part, the quiet husband who doesn't suspect a thing. And in that silence, I started making a plan. The first step was simple. Find out the truth, every detail. I wasn't going to confront her with just suspicion. I wanted facts, undeniable evidence. Because when I finally decided to act, I wanted it to be final. The next morning, when she left for work, I followed her. Not closely. I've watched enough people get caught in the movies to know better. I kept my distance, my car far enough back to blend in with the flow of traffic. She didn't go straight to her office. Instead, she stopped at a coffee shop 3 blocks away, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows. That's where I saw him, tall, sharp suit, leaning in close to her over a corner table. She laughed at something he said, touching his hand in a way that felt too familiar to be professional. I stayed in my car, gripping the steering wheel, watching as my marriage played out in front of me like a bad TV drama. But this wasn't TV. This was my life. And I was about to take control of it. Her words had been a knife, but the real wound came later that night. I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the image of her in someone else's arms replaying in my head like a loop I couldn't shut off. Every sound from her side of the bed felt louder than usual. The turning of pages, the rustle of blankets, until she finally turned off the light and drifted into sleep as if nothing had happened. I got up and walked into the living room, pacing like a man who'd lost his map and compass. Part of me wanted to wake her, to demand an explanation right there and then. Another part of me knew it didn't matter. The moment she spoke those words, she'd already told me the truth, whether she realized it or not. In the morning, she was unusually cheerful, humming as she made coffee. I sat at the table, watching her. The woman I thought I knew had been replaced by someone else entirely. Someone who could look me in the eye and casually admit the most unforgivable thing. She poured me a cup and said, "You're quiet today." "Just tired," I lied. I didn't trust myself to speak more than that. I left for work early, not because I had urgent tasks, but because I needed space to think. The drive felt longer than usual, the radio nothing but background noise. At my desk, I stared at my computer screen, pretending to work while my mind raced through the years we'd been together. The good times, the promises, the trust one thought we had. Now all of it felt counterfeit. At lunch, I called my best friend Daniel. He could tell from my voice that something was wrong. "Tell me what happened," he said. So I did. I told him exactly what she'd said, word for word. There was a long pause on the other end before he finally replied. "You can't stay with her after that, man. There's no coming back from it." His words were like a mirror to my own thoughts. I had been wrestling with the idea since last night, and now hearing it aloud made it feel inevitable. When I returned home that evening, she was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Hey," she said without looking up. I sat across from her and asked, "Do you remember what you said to me last night?" She frowned. "What are you talking about?" "When I told you I wanted to be with you, and you said—" I repeated her words exactly. Her eyes flickered, a flash of panic quickly masked by a dismissive smile. "Oh, come on. I was joking. You take things too seriously." I stared at her, waiting for some sign of sincerity, but there was none. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't even concerned about how deeply she'd hurt me. That was the moment I decided. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a hollow shell, and I had been living inside it, convincing myself it was still home. Over the next few days, I moved quietly. I gathered important documents, made copies of everything I might need, and spoke to a lawyer. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet resolve building inside me like a storm waiting to break. On Friday morning, I left the signed papers on the kitchen table with a simple note. "You broke something we can't fix." I walked out the door, not looking back. The first night away from her was strange. I stayed at a small, quiet motel on the edge of town. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet, the kind of place no one notices. I didn't need comfort, just distance. Lying on the stiff mattress, I realized I wasn't crying. I thought I might, but there was only a dull heaviness in my chest, like the echo of a wound that had already gone numb. The next morning, I checked my phone to find a series of missed calls and a few short messages from her. "We need to talk. Why are you doing this? You're overreacting." The tone wasn't remorse, it was control. She wasn't sorry for what she'd said, only for losing her grip on me. I turned the phone off. In the days that followed, word began to spread among mutual friends. Some reached out, shocked, asking if it was true. Others stayed silent. The responses told me who really knew us, and who had been fooled by the image we'd presented. Daniel stopped by the motel one evening with takeout. "You're handling this better than I expected," he said between bites. "I'm not handling it," I replied. "I'm just done." We ate in silence for a while before he added, "You know she's going to try to pull you back in, right? She's not the type to let go." He was right. A week later, she showed up at my workplace. She stood in the lobby, all polished composure, like she had rehearsed every step. "We need to talk," she said again, her voice low but firm. I walked past her without stopping. "We already did." She followed me outside. "You're throwing everything away over one stupid comment? One comment can tell you more about a person than years of small talk," I said, meeting her eyes for the first time since I left. "And yours told me everything I needed to know." Her expression faltered, just for a second, but then the mask returned. "You'll regret this." I didn't reply. I got in my car and drove off, leaving her standing in the parking lot. That was the last time we spoke in person. The divorce moved quickly. No kids, no shared business, nothing to fight over except the truth. And the truth didn't need her permission. Months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, coffee in hand, watching the city below. The ache had faded into something lighter. Not happiness yet, but freedom. The kind of freedom you don't realize you've lost until it's back in your hands. One evening, Daniel invited me to a small gathering at his place. I almost didn't go, but I forced myself. When I arrived, the air was warm with laughter and the smell of food. Among the guests was a woman named Claire. She had a quiet presence, not the kind that demanded attention, but the kind that drew it without trying. We talked for hours. Not about the past, not about pain, but about books, travel, and the small things we noticed in the world. When I left that night, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid of connection. I was just done giving it to people who didn't value it. As I walked home under the streetlights, I thought about the note I'd left behind. You broke something we can't fix. It wasn't just about the marriage. It was about the trust, the version of myself that once believed love was enough without respect. That man was gone. And I didn't miss him.